Hello and welcome to this section, Building Out the Main Menu. In this section, we'll be building out our main menu using Unreal Engine's UMG system and setting up transitioning between the different menu states. In this video, we'll start by building out a persistent state manager for managing our main menu and game states. We'll then build out our menu screens, the main menu, multiplayer menu, loading screen, host network game screen, and join network game screen. And then we'll cap it all off by connecting our state manager to all the various screens and have them displayed in-game. In the next section, the state manager will also handle connecting to and hosting network sessions. So in this first lesson, we're going to be implementing a state machine for handling where we are in the overall application flow, as well as set up our map structure for flowing between the menus and into the game. So without further babbling, let's get right into it. The first thing we're going to do is create a new blank level to serve as our main menu level. We'll also ensure that our sandbox level is set up alongside it, as we'll be transitioning to it when we connect to or host a match. So in your content browser, create an assets/maps folder and save our current sandbox level in there as map_sandbox. Afterwards, we'll create a new level and call it map_main menu. This level will remain completely empty. Once those are created, navigate over to your project settings, maps and modes, and change your editor startup map and your game default map to the new map_main menu that we just created. This will ensure that our main menu level will come up when we start the game. So now that we've got some basic levels created, let's create our state manager, which will be responsible for displaying the various menus, hosting, and connecting to games. As discussed in the previous section, the ideal place to handle menu states is in a game instance class. We'll create a new class now based on game instance called platformer game instance. If you followed along closely in the last few lessons, you'll notice that I made a mistake in our pickup.h class where I forgot to put visible anywhere in the u property over our bool b is picked up. Add that now and everything should compile just fine. With that new class created, we need to add a few new modules to our project.build.cs file in Visual Studio before we can start defining everything. So open up your build.cs file and you'll notice that there's a private dependency module names commented out in this file. We're going to uncomment this line and add UMG to the array list inside it. This will add the required UMG and slate modules needed to make changes to UMG from C++. With that done, we're going to move over to our platformer game instance.h file, where we'll first define an enum at the top for keeping track of which game state we're currently in. So we're going to add uenum blueprint type, enum class eGameState, uint8, enone umeta display name equal none, eLoading screen umeta display name equal loading, eStartup umeta display name startup, eMain menu, umeta display name equal main menu, eMultiplayer home, umeta display name equal multiplayer home, eMultiplayer join, umeta display name equal multiplayer join, eMultiplayer host, display name multiplayer host, eMultiplayer in-game, umeta display name equal multiplayer in-game, and finally eTraveling, umeta display name equal traveling. These are fairly self-explanatory. So with those defined, we're also going to need an enum for keeping track of which input mode we're in at any given time. Though there are various structs for holding input mode data, there's no easy way to keep track of which one is currently active without tracking it manually, which is where this enum will come into play. So we're going to add uenum blueprint type, enum class einput mode, uint8, EUI only, umeta display name equal UI only, EUI in game, umeta display name equal UI in game, and eGame only, umeta display name equal game only. With that done, we can start defining our actual class. We'll start off by defining our constructor with uPlatformer game instance, const fObjectInitializer, and objectInitializer. We'll follow that up by creating class references to the various user widgets we'll be creating in the following lessons. So we're going to define uProperty, edit defaults only, blueprint read only, category equal platformer game instance, T subclass of, class uUserWidget, C main menu. We're then going to copy that uProperty line and paste it for the following. So, after the uProperty, T subclass of class uUserWidget, C MP home, paste in the uProperty, T subclass of class uUserWidget, C MP join, paste it in again, T subclass of class uUserWidget, C MP host, and finally one last paste with T subclass of class uUserWidget, C loading screen. We'll then need a public function for changing between states, so uFunction, blueprint callable, category equal platformer game instance, void, change state, game state, new state. We'll create a getter for getting the current game state, so uFunction, blueprint callable, category equal platformer game instance, game state, get current game state. And we'll need two properties and a function for handling input mode changes. So uFunction, blueprint callable, category equal platformer game instance, void, set input mode, input mode, new input mode, comma, bool, show mouse cursor. Followed by uProperty, blueprint read only, category equal platformer game instance, input mode, current input mode, and finally uProperty, blueprint read only, category equal platformer game instance, bool, is showing mouse cursor. And to finish off our class definition, we're going to need a few private properties and functions. First, we'll need a reference to our currently displayed widget with uUserWidget star current widget, and a property to hold our current game state, game state current state. And finally, we're going to add private functions for both entering and leaving the various states. So void enter state, game state new state, and void leave state. I'll define all of our functions using IntelliSense now, and then move over to the CPP file to start filling it all out. So we start off in our constructor by setting the initial values, current state equal game state : none, and current widget equal null pointer. With those initial values set up, we move over to our change state function, where we're going to check to make sure the state is not the current state by calling if new state not equal current state, then leave state and enter state new state. For our get current game state, we'll simply return our current state with return current state, and then we'll move over to our set input mode function. Simply, we're going to switch on the new input mode and set it accordingly. We'll then display or hide our mouse cursor depending on what was passed in, and then retain our input state for further use should we need it. So we'll call switch new input mode, case input mode EUI only, case input mode EUI in game, and case input mode game only. And within UI only, we're going to call get world, get first player controller, set input mode, input mode UI only. And then we'll call break. In our UI in game, we'll do get world, get first player controller, set input mode, input mode game and UI, break, and finally in game only, get world, get first player controller, set input mode, input mode game only, break. After the switch, we're going to show or hide the mouse cursor by calling get world, get first player controller, show mouse cursor, show mouse cursor. And then we'll retain the values for further use with current input mode equal new input mode, and is showing mouse cursor, showing mouse cursor. We'll then move on to our enter state function. We're going to define a switch which finds which state we're entering and then displays the appropriate widget. We're going to call current state equal new state to set the current state to new state, and then define an empty switch, switch current state, case game state loading screen, break, case game state main menu, break, game state multiplayer home, break, game state multiplayer join, break, case game state multiplayer host, break, case game state multiplayer in game, break, case game state traveling, break, and case game state none, break, followed by default break. As I mentioned, we're going to leave this entire switch empty for now, as we'll be filling it out in a future lesson. What we're going to do now is copy the entire switch and paste it into our leave state function. In the leave state function, however, after the switch, we're going to switch to enone state to indicate that we're temporarily stateless. So enter state, egame state, enone. And that's all we're going to do with our platformer game instance for now. We'll go ahead and create all the various screens and finish off the section by returning to these enter state and leave state functions to display and hide the various screens as we transition between them.